Hey everyone, it's Alex, and it's that time of year. This is the time of year when a lot of people on YouTube will be making videos about their best and worst films of the year, and I am doing the same. However, unlike most people, I'm going to be putting out my worst films of 2017 video first, and then the best second, because I feel it's better to get the bad films out of the way first before praising the good films. Now, I saw a ton of films in 2017, and I mean a ton. And while I saw way more good movies than bad movies, I did see quite my fair share of bad movies. And oh boy, some of these films were so god-awful that you better be prepared for an epic rant against these films when I discuss them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to count down my top 15 worst films of 2017 plus my dishonorable mentions. Now, I should note that I did not see every critically maligned film in 2017. There were some films where I just did not bother seeing them because I knew I would not be able to go in them with an open mind. I knew I would just hate them without even watching them, so I did not bother seeing them. And some of those films include Monster Trucks, Resident Evil: The Last Chapter, Transformers: The Last Night, 50 Shades Darker, and Diary of a Wimpy Kid: The Long Haul. I did not bother seeing those movies, so as a result they will not be on my list anywhere. Now, some of my dishonorable mentions, you may be shocked, are not in my top 15 because some of these films I know are in a lot of people's top 10, top 15, top 20, whatever. Don't get me wrong, the films in my dishonorable mentions were bad, but I just didn't feel they were bad enough to warrant a spot on the top 15. So, without further ado, let's get started. My dishonorable mentions are The Circle, Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets, American Assassin, Tulip Fever, Ferdinand, The Greatest Showman, The Shack, Suburbicon, The Snowman, Table 19, Happy Death Day, Kidnap, The Mummy, The Boss Baby, The Great Wall, 47 Meters Down, The Belko Experiment, and Geostorm. Alright, now it's time to get into the top 15. Here we go. Number 15, The Hitman's Bodyguard. Now, even though this film got mostly negative reviews from critics, quite a lot of people I know found it to either be a guilty pleasure or to be one of the more underrated films of the year. And honestly, I don't see where they're coming from. I really don't. This film just annoyed the hell out of me. Now, watching the trailer, I knew it was not going to be an Oscar contender, but I just wanted it to be a fun summer guilty pleasure, if that's all it was going to be. But it wasn't. The story is pretty ridiculous. Samuel L. Jackson is this badass assassin who has to testify at The Hague in Amsterdam, where an Eastern European dictator, played by Gary Oldman, is on trial for crimes against humanity, and Ryan Reynolds is the bodyguard that has to escort him there, and of course, all hijinks ensue as several people are trying to kill them. And while it could have been a fun road trip movie, it was just boring and annoying. Both Ryan Reynolds and Samuel L. Jackson are both really annoying at times. They really got on my nerves. Yes, they did have some funny moments here and there, but their characters just got so insufferable at times, I was just thinking to myself, please just go away. And Gary Oldman. Oh, what the hell were you doing in this movie? His accent is terrible, and when he's delivering his lines, he's not even putting effort into it. He's just phoning it in for the paycheck. Same with Samuel L. Jackson and Ryan Reynolds. Them and Gary Oldman, they clearly just took this film for the money so they could go on a nice vacation to Europe. Ugh. And also the action scenes in this movie. Oh my god, they are so poorly filmed and edited. I don't see how people are praising these action scenes. I really don't. How can these action scenes be considered good? I mean, there's so many quick cuts and shaky cam. You can't even see what's going on. And then there's this romantic subplot between Ryan Reynolds and a former girlfriend of his, played by Elodie Young, I believe her name is. And they just have absolutely no chemistry at all. You don't care about them, and you don't want them to reunite as a couple. Now, there is some good chemistry between Samuel L. Jackson and Salma Hayek, since they play a married couple, but even their chemistry can't save this movie from its faults. And in addition to all that, the writing and directing overall for an action buddy film like this is just subpar at best and downright awful at worst. There was potential for this film to be a guilty pleasure or maybe just a fun summer ride, but it just did not get there. And to those who did like this movie, good for you, but I don't see where your praise is coming from. I'm sorry. Number 14, The Star. Now, I saw the trailer for this movie at another film, which we'll get to later on my worst list, and I thought to myself, oh my god, this looks horrendous. Basically, it's telling the story of the birth of Jesus from the perspective of several barnyard animals. But then reviews started coming in, and they were actually surprisingly positive for the most part. But then as more reviews came in, the Rotten Tomatoes score kept dropping until they became rotten. I think it's now at 45%. And yeah, this movie is just as stupid and annoying as I thought it would be. Admittedly, it's not as bad as I thought it would be, considering that it's only at number 14 on my list, but this is not a good movie to show, especially to kids, because this is aimed at kids, especially little kids, but this is not the kind of movie you want to show to kids if you're trying to teach them the story about the birth of Jesus. It really isn't. For one thing, the animation is god-awful. I mean, seriously, high school students could make a better looking animated film than this. I mean, the animation looks like it's just a rough draft, not a final copy. And this was made by Sony Pictures Animation, which is a movie studio that has a lot of money to spend. So how could they make an animated movie look so cheap? And I guess they thought, well, if we make it on a cheap budget, families will go to see it and we'll make all our money back. No, it didn't work. This movie bombed at the box office, and rightfully so. The writing in this film is also terrible. Just because a film is geared towards little kids, that gives you no excuse to have god-awful writing. I mean, the writing in this movie is so pedestrian and annoying that Disney Channel and Nickelodeon shows have better writing than this. The characters, for the most part, are really annoying. You do have a few good ones like Stephen Yeun as Bo the Donkey and Keegan-Michael Key as Dave the Dove, but that's pretty much it. The rest of the animals are really annoying. Aida Bryant is really annoying as Ruth the Sheep. Kelly Clarkson, even though her role is very small, as Leah the Horse. She's annoying because all she does is just break into song. Patricia Heaton and Anthony Anderson are wasted as other barnyard animals. And then the most annoying characters of all, the camels. The three camels of the Three Wise Men, voiced by Oprah Winfrey, Tyler Perry, and Tracy Morgan. Now, admittedly, Oprah Winfrey's character is the smart one of the camels, but Tyler Perry and Tracy Morgan, dear God, these characters were insufferable. When these camels hear about the birth of Jesus, they argue of whether or not they're going to a birthday party or a baby shower. I'm not kidding. I wish I were, but I'm not. Seriously, who comes up with a story like this? Is it to make little kids and their parents laugh? If so, it's not working. And then you have Gina Rodriguez and Zachary Levi as Mary and Joseph. They're fine, I guess, but the dialogue they say to each other is just so cheesy. It sounds like they're characters in a Nicholas Sparks movie. We don't want to see a Nicholas Sparks movie about the birth of Jesus. We really don't, especially when Mary and Joseph are depicted as typical Nicholas Sparks movie lovers. And also, on a final note, for a movie that's supposed to be family-friendly, why are there not one, but two scenes where a dove is twerking? Yes, Keegan-Michael Key's character Dave the Dove twerks not once, but twice, as a means of distraction in certain scenes. I mean, do they seriously think that because an animal twerks, it's suddenly family-friendly? No, it's not. Number 13, The Foreigner. An action movie starring Jackie Chan and Pierce Brosnan? That should be awesome. Unfortunately, this movie is boring as hell. This movie has like a 63% on Rotten Tomatoes last time I checked, and I'm sorry, but that's way too high. I know there are some people who are fans of this movie, but I could just not get into this movie at all. This movie had some of the most sluggish pacing I've seen this past year. It's so sluggish, I kept falling asleep. A film that is only about 2 hours long felt like 5 hours. Now the concept is very interesting. Jackie Chan is a former assassin who's now living a quiet life. When his college-age daughter is brutally murdered by terrorists, he seeks revenge, and his key target is Pierce Brosnan, who is a former IRA leader, and he claims he's had nothing to do with this recent terrorist action, but Jackie Chan isn't convinced and decides he's going to try and expose him at whatever cost. That should be a great action movie right there. Unfortunately, not only is it horribly paced, but it's lazily written, and apart from Jackie Chan and Pierce Brosnan trying their best, none of the other actors give a good performance. The other characters are completely forgettable and wasted. The directing is so lazy that I'm amazed studios even thought this was good enough to release into theaters. And this is no rookie at the helm. The director of this film was Martin Campbell, the same guy who directed two of the most beloved James Bond films, GoldenEye and Casino Royale. How does the guy who directed those movies direct something like this? I believe he also directed Green Lantern as well. I never saw that movie, but I know a lot of people hated it. I'm guessing this is probably better than that, but still. An action movie about trying to catch terrorists should not be so slow-paced that the person watching it nearly falls asleep. Because how on earth are you able to make Jackie Chan boring to watch? I seriously don't get it, but it happened here. And I'm not saying a film with Jackie Chan has to be all action, 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 with no story behind it. But still, even if the action scenes in here aren't as heavy as they are in other Jackie Chan films, there should still be a substantial story set to back those action scenes up, because the action scenes were awesome. But every time the action scenes were done, the movie just felt as slow as molasses, and I'm like, oh, please just get to something that will get me excited. But that rarely ever happened. And by the time there is a resolution, it just falls completely flat on its face, and you don't feel like anything has changed by the time the movie's over. And for a film starring action icons like Jackie Chan and Pierce Brosnan, that's a goddamn shame. Number 12, Wish Upon. Every year we always seem to get these really cheaply made generic horror films that look extremely predictable and look extremely insulting to its audience. And that's exactly what Wish Upon is. Now, there are a few good things in this film. Joey King is good as the lead character Claire, Ryan Philippe is good as her father, and Ki Hong Lee is good as Claire's friend and potential love interest Ryan. But other than that, this movie is a total mess. The concept is pretty silly. Claire finds a wish box that grants her 7 wishes, and she uses it to wish for pretty superficial things like having a girl who bullies her get seriously ill, becoming super rich, becoming super popular, getting a boyfriend, those kinds of things. And every time she wishes for something like that, someone tragically dies in a horrific, gruesome manner. And as this keeps on going, I'm thinking to myself, I know exactly what's going to happen next, and boom, what I predict happens does happen. And it's just like, oh, come on, give me something new already. But it never does. And as Claire keeps making more wishes and more people keep dying, and even though she starts realizing the connection, she still can't stop herself to the point where you just want to yell at her, "What is wrong with you? Don't you realize you're just making things worse?" She has these two friends in the film played by Shannon Purser and Sydney Park, and they're just your stereotypical friends who don't really have any character development at all, and of course one of them becomes jealous and wants to steal the wish box from her, and it's like, oh, come on, really? But as bad as that all is, the thing that really makes this film bad is the ending. I had given the film a certain grade in my head as I was watching it, but then once the ending came and a certain scene happened, I was like, no, no. Screw you, movie, for insulting your audience like that. How dare you do something like that? Now, some people who've seen the movie might be thinking, well, of course that's what would have happened. It's the only thing that could have happened. But I say no. No, it didn't need to end the way it did end. And the way it did end was just a giant middle finger to its audience. And the director of this film, well, let's just say he doesn't have a good track record as a director. He's had a long career as a cinematographer. The guy's name is John R. Leonetti, but from the few films he's directed, some of his director credits include Mortal Kombat Annihilation and Annabelle. Yeah, that's not exactly a great resume right there. If you like these cheap, generic horror films and they're a guilty pleasure for you, then Wish Upon is probably right up your alley. But for people like myself, Wish Upon just represents many of the same lazy tropes, cliches, and stereotypes that are plaguing the horror industry today. Now, we've had a lot of good horror films in the past few years, but these bad films just continue to be churned out and quickly made for the hope of making a quick buck, and it has to stop. And Wish Upon is just another reason why it needs to stop. Number 11, Baywatch. Taking a TV show and creating a film adaptation of it is not always going to be easy. Sometimes it works really well, and other times it fails miserably, and Baywatch falls into the second category. Now, the original TV show starring David Hasselhoff and Pamela Anderson wasn't exactly groundbreaking TV, and it's never been included in lists of the greatest TV shows of all time. But from episodes that I have seen on YouTube, it did have kind of a fun, guilty pleasure aspect to it. This movie, however, represents nothing that made the show so notable in the first place. Sure, you got the lifeguards always running around in the red bathing suits and looking beautiful as they do it, but instead of trying to portray lifeguards as heroes in these extreme, dangerous situations, all it does is just create a bunch of opportunities to demonstrate raunchy comedy and fail miserably at doing so. This movie is so raunchy to the point where it's just being raunchy for the sake of being raunchy, and it doesn't come across as funny, it comes across as disgusting. There are so many raunchy jokes, particularly involving private parts, that by at least the second joke, I'm just like, enough already. This is getting old. There's this one scene with this character named Ronnie who gets his testicles stuck in a chair and they're trying to get him out. It goes on for at least 5 minutes, and clearly they want it to be funny, but it's not. I'm just like, just get him out already. End this. And then there's a scene where Zac Efron and Dwayne Johnson go to a morgue. You all know that scene. I'm not going to go into it any further. I'm just like, oh, please just stop. End this scene now. Please. And that's only the tip of the iceberg. All the other jokes just fall flat on their faces. Zac Efron and Dwayne Johnson do try their best, and Priyanka Chopra, she's hammy in kind of a funny way as the villain. And Alexandra Daddario, she does try as well, but the rest of the cast just fails miserably, particularly John Bass as Ronnie, and Kelly Rohrbach as April. Oh my god, these characters are so annoying. Uh, Ronnie is just your stereotypical annoying fat guy who basically is trying to be like a Jonah Hill character in a raunchy comedy, except unlike Jonah Hill, John Bass is neither funny nor likable as Ronnie. Ronnie is so annoying, and he's almost pretty much like a stalker in his pursuit of April. Now, while many women would be creeped out by Ronnie's behavior, April actually likes it. She finds it endearing, and she's actually attracted to him as well. And no people could have this kind of chemistry in real life and become a couple. They just couldn't. And the fact that this movie seems to think that it can happen to anybody just makes it insulting, because two people don't just become a couple just like that. The action in this movie is also terrible. The original Baywatch's action was also pretty over the top, but at least they put in effort to make that action look realistic. Here, they just make the stunts look so outlandish it almost feels like you're watching an episode of American Ninja Warrior rather than watching an actual movie. And there's this one scene in particular, a scene with a burning boat, that has literally the worst CGI I have ever seen in my life. And as is the case with many TV show to movie adaptations, they try to connect the movie to the original show by bringing in cast members for a cameo, in this case David Hasselhoff and Pamela Anderson, but their cameos are just wasted, and it's like, what was the point of them even being there? And also, Dwayne Johnson. What the hell was he thinking going after critics who hated the movie? Sure, you can be upset critics didn't like a movie that you might have had fun making, but you don't need to go on social media and bash them as being idiots just because they didn't like the movie and some of your fans did. And by the way, not every fan of Dwayne Johnson's liked Baywatch because it actually flopped at the box office. So yeah, what do you got to say about that, Dwayne? Number 10. King Arthur, Legend of the Sword. A note to Hollywood filmmakers. Don't create a movie with such a massive budget if you're not going to use that budget correctly. This movie cost like $175 million to make, and where did the money go? A movie that costs $175 million should not look this bad. Dear God, the visual effects in this movie are easily some of the worst visual effects I've ever seen, right near Baywatch. There are these CGI animals, particularly elephants. They just look so fake that it almost feels like a video game rather than a movie. The writing is terrible, the directing is awful. Guy Ritchie, what the hell were you thinking with this movie? You better not mess up with the live-action Aladdin, because if that movie is as bad as King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, your career is pretty much over. And additionally, the acting is pretty bad for the most part as well. Charlie Hunnam is okay, and so is Djimon Hounsou. And I know Charlie Hunnam, he said he went after this part with a vengeance, and he really worked himself physically to get the role, and I can certainly applaud his efforts at doing so. But even he can't fully save this film from its awful script and directing. And Jude Law, man, talk about a phoned-in paycheck performance. I get Jude Law has worked with Guy Ritchie many times in the past, and maybe he did this not only just for the paycheck, but out of a sense of loyalty to Guy Ritchie. But come on, man. You've done roles smaller than this, like with your cameo role in the Martin Scorsese film Hugo, and that performance was Oscar-worthy compared to your performance in this movie. I'm sure you'll be redeemed by Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald, but come on, Jude Law, you're better than this. But even worse than the bad visual effects and the acting and the writing and the directing is the editing. Dear God, this film has some of the worst action editing I've ever seen. Just shaky cam galore, and not only did the shaky cam irritate me, it literally gave me a physical headache. And I cannot stand films that use shaky cam to the point where I get headaches. And even though I'm not the biggest expert on the King Arthur mythology, I don't see how any of this connects to the King Arthur mythology at all. I really don't. Yeah, there's like the pulling of Excalibur from the stone, and yeah, Arthur becomes king and creates the Knights of the Round Table, but this is just some weird fantasy that just happens to have King Arthur in it. And Guy Ritchie's intention for this movie was to start like a 6-film franchise, I think, but now that's never going to happen, because this movie massively bombed at the box office, and rightfully so. And if this does not send a message to Hollywood that they need to actually put their feet where their money is and actually make a film look like it was worthy of its budget, seriously, like I said before, how does a film that cost $175 million end up looking this bad? If they don't start showing that they use their budgets wisely on these big blockbuster films, no one's going to see them anymore, because we're sick and tired of these films always being pushed out into theaters with no effort to show for it. Number 9, Unforgettable. We've had many bad stalker films over the past few years. The Boy Next Door, No Good Deed, The Perfect Guy, When the Bough Breaks. Those films were all rightfully dismissed as rip-offs of Fatal Attraction. However, Unforgettable makes all those movies actually look like Fatal Attraction. Katherine Heigl, what the hell is she doing in a movie like this? I know her diva reputation is one of the many reasons why her career has been struggling for several years, but seriously, she needs to fire her mother as her manager. Yes, that really is true, her mother is her manager, and she needs to get a new manager, and probably a new agent too, who can actually help find good scripts for her. Because seriously, how could anybody sign on to a film like this and actually think it was good? Now, there are a few redeemable aspects, namely Rosario Dawson. She is at least trying her best in this movie, even though the script and the directing don't help her at all. But you can tell she's actually trying to put in effort, and you actually do care for her character. But other than that, what is there to like about this movie? It's just the same old stalker movie cliches we've seen over and over and over again. Katherine Heigl is a divorced woman who's jealous of her ex-husband's new fiancé, and she's not just jealous, she's extremely clingy, possessive, and she's just a plain psychopath. There's no sugarcoating it. And she's so obsessed with Rosario Dawson that she decides she's not only going to kill her, but she's going to use Rosario Dawson's abusive ex-boyfriend to help her do so. Wow, that's so original. It's like we've never seen that before, except we've seen that a million times before. Everything in this movie you can predict before it actually happens. And by the time this movie's over, you're just thinking to yourself, yep, that's exactly how I figured it was going to happen, and it does. Katherine Heigl, she just puts in no effort into this movie. She just seems to pick these films just based on the concept without even reading the script, and then once she realizes what she's gotten herself into, she decides to just phone her way through it so she can get done and get her paycheck as soon as possible. And it doesn't help that this movie's director is a first-time director, Denise DeNovi. She's had a long career as a producer. She's been producing films for nearly 30 years, particularly romance films and horror films, and admittedly quite a lot of them are not very good films. But she's had some good films on her resume, and producers certainly spend a lot of time with directors. But just because you spend time with directors doesn't mean you'll actually become a good director yourself. I can understand wanting to try it out maybe once or twice, but that doesn't mean just you'll automatically hit it out of the park. And Denise DeNovi, man, she failed miserably here. If she wants to direct more films, she seriously needs to get some better training, because she did this movie absolutely no favors. And the writer of this movie does not have a good resume either. I forget her name, but she wrote the movie Shut-In, which critics didn't like, and she's writing the Transformers spin-off Bumblebee. Yeah, that's not a good resume right there. Basically, this movie is just your average stalker film you would find on the Lifetime channel, because the Lifetime channel pretty much has a new stalker film every week. The only reason why this film went to theaters and not the Lifetime channel is probably because of the fact that you have movie stars like Rosario Dawson and Katherine Heigl in it. Oh, and also the guy who plays Rosario Dawson's fiance and Katherine Heigl's ex-husband, he's pretty meaningless in his role. His role could have been played by any actor. The girl playing the daughter, she was just meh. Just any person could have played that part, really. Basically, this movie's nothing special, and despite its title, it was quite forgettable because it flopped at the box office and got a bad grade on CinemaScore, and rightfully so. And this movie is just another reason why horror, even though it's been making a comeback recently, still has a very bad reputation as a film genre. Number 8. Snatched. Now, admittedly, I have not watched Amy Schumer's TV show Inside Amy Schumer, but I did see her in the film Trainwreck, and I ended up liking that film a lot more than I thought I would. It was one of my biggest surprises of 2015. But here, what the hell happened? Oh my god, Amy Schumer was hilarious in Trainwreck, but in Snatched, she's just downright annoying. Ugh. Now, part of it could be due to the fact that the writing and the directing don't help her here, but still. How did she think this character would be funny? I really don't get it, because her character is just always talking and dragging people into plans that they don't want to be a part of, and just making everybody's lives miserable that you just want to say to her, just stop! Please, shut up! And Goldie Hawn. This was Goldie Hawn's first film in 15 years. She does try, but her character is just your very stereotypical cat lady, because yes, she literally has a lot of cats and makes sculptures of cats that, even though she's trying, you just wonder, what the hell is she doing in here? How much money did she have to be offered for this? But despite those two, the worst performance in this film is Ike Barinholtz as Jeffrey, the brother of Amy Schumer and the son of Goldie Hawn. Oh my god. Very stereotypical, nerdy mama's boy, living at home, gives piano lessons to neighborhood kids as a way to make money. And when he gets on the phone to find his kidnapped mother and sister and he argues with the government agent, it's just so annoying that you just want his character to go away and never come back. And the fact that they try to make him into a hero is just downright insulting to real heroes who actually rescue people from kidnapping situations. And speaking of the kidnapping that forms the plot point of this movie, they just make stereotype after stereotype about South Americans, and it's just downright insulting and degrading. I mean, are we seriously still at this? Have we learned nothing? Wanda Sykes and Joan Cusack do provide some comic relief as this former FBI agent and her partner who end up trying to rescue them, but even they can't fully save Snatch from just how annoying and insulting and degrading of a movie it is. Seriously, Amy Schumer and Goldie Hawn, don't ever make a movie like this ever again. This is one of the most insulting mother-daughter comedies I have ever seen. And if people actually think this is a great example of a mother and daughter bonding, then you seriously need to re-examine what a healthy mother-daughter bond should look like. Because this film is just so cliched and stereotypical that I don't see how anybody could actually think it was worth being a part of. And the director of this movie actually has a good resume. Jonathan Levine, he directed films like 50-50 and Warm Bodies. I haven't seen those films, but I know a lot of people have and love them. So how does he go from that to this? What is it with these directors going on such a downward slope like this? Number 7, Just Getting Started. This movie only came out a couple of weeks ago, but if you've never heard of it, I don't blame you. It was not screened in advance for critics, and the stars did no promotion for it. And as a result, it bombed badly at the box office. It came in at number 10 in its opening weekend. And this story is one of the most ridiculous stories in a film in the past year. Morgan Freeman plays this hotshot director of a senior citizens apartment complex out in California, and it turns out he's in hiding there because he helped put a mob boss behind jail, and now the mob boss's wife wants revenge and sends an assassin out there to kill him, and Tommy Lee Jones moves in, and he becomes the new big man on campus, making Morgan Freeman jealous. Then Rene Russo comes along, and both Morgan Freeman and Tommy Lee Jones fall in love with her, and they start competing over her like they're a bunch of 14-year-old boys, saying lines of dialogues like, "I'm gonna make her mine." Seriously, what were they thinking making these actors say lines like this? It's like we're watching a Disney Channel or Nickelodeon show, because that's where they usually say stupid lines like that. We don't need to see a movie with senior citizens acting like 14-year-olds while competing for the affection of the same woman. And they get into this petty rivalry on the golf course, and then they have to team up together to stop the assassins. It's just so stupid. And not only that, it's boring as hell. Seriously, how do you make a movie with Morgan Freeman, Tommy Lee Jones, and Rene Russo boring as hell? And once again, we got this film being directed by another acclaimed director, Ron Shelton, the guy who directed Bull Durham, White Men Can't Jump, and Tin Cup. So how does he go from those movies to this? And how much money did they have to offer all the stars to be in this? Ugh. This is seriously the worst performance I have seen out of Morgan Freeman, Tommy Lee Jones, and Rene Russo. They brought no effort to their characters. The characters were all pretty annoying. The story itself was just beyond ridiculous. Jane Seymour, even though she was unrecognizable in this blonde wig, looked like your very stereotypical mob boss's wife, and she just had the very stereotypical New Jersey accent that gets really grating when it's overdone and stereotyped. Not only do you have all of that, but this movie is so boring that I had to struggle to stay awake, and instead of feeling like it was only an hour and a half, which is the actual runtime, it felt like 4 freaking hours. Ugh. Please, Morgan Freeman, Tommy Lee Jones, Rene Russo, Ron Shelton, don't ever do a movie like this again. Number 6, Friend Request. The movie Unfriended certainly divided a lot of people when it came out in 2015, mainly because of its depiction of social media as a horror weapon and for its bad message about bullying. I myself did not like that film. However, Friend Request makes Unfriended look like The Social Network. The story in this movie is pretty stupid. A popular college girl named Laura is stalked by this other girl named Marina who has some serious mental health issues, and when Marina goes too far, Marina becomes friends with Laura on Facebook, but then when Marina goes too far and Laura calls her out on it, Maria commits suicide, and then from the grave, or her computer, because she filmed herself live on the internet, and her computer is controlling her ghost, she starts stalking and haunting Laura's friends and killing them off, and all the meanwhile she posts videos on Laura's computer, making it look like Laura is the one posting these videos, and Laura starts becoming the social pariah on her college campus. You see how stupid the plot of this movie is? And of course, Laura tries to maintain her innocence. No one believes her. The police admit they can't arrest her because the videos on her Facebook page have no IP address and can't be traced to her, yet they still think she did it anyway, despite her plea of innocence. Alicia Debnam Carey does her best as Laura, but the rest of the actors are just bad. William Moseley plays Laura's boyfriend. He played Peter in the Chronicles of Narnia, and he tries to do an American accent here. He fails miserably because his British accent keeps slipping through. Just none of the characters have any development whatsoever. Marina's backstory is not explored well enough because they gave an interesting insight into the reason for her behavior, but we never get a full, in-depth exploration of it. And that's what this movie needed to make her a more well-developed character, because here she's just a generic stalker with mental problems that she's just one of the biggest throwaway villains of the year. And then the ending. Oh my god. I thought Wish Upon had the biggest middle finger ending of the year, But when I saw the ending of Friend Request, I thought to myself, no, 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 you did not seriously just do that. No. This movie's ending is so insulting that it makes the whole point of the movie pointless. Because now we're at a point where it looks like everything that just happened is going to start all over again. And it's like, why do we even bother watching all of this for the past 85 minutes? I really hate it when movies do that. And Friend Request, thank God few people have heard of it. Because if you watch this movie, you will wonder, who the hell even thought this movie up into existence? This makes no sense. And it doesn't. It really, really doesn't. Number 5, The House. Once again, another raunchy comedy making this list. And this one actually stars actors I usually like. I love Will Ferrell and Amy Poehler, but what are they doing here? For a long time, I thought Step Brothers was Will Ferrell's worst movie. No. This takes the cake just by a hair. The characters in this movie are so stupid. Will Ferrell and Amy Poehler are this couple who want to send their daughter to college, but they don't have the money to do so. And the reason why is because the town council has taken all their money in order to build a grand deluxe community pool. I'm not joking. And so they have to start an illegal casino in their friend's house in order to raise the money to send their daughter to college. Will Ferrell, his character is just so stupid that you just wonder, what kind of person acts like this in real life? No father is like this. Amy Poehler is nowhere near as dumb, but she's just as much of a bad parent as Will Ferrell. But as bad as those two are, they are nowhere near as bad as Nick Kroll and Jason Mantzoukas. Nick Kroll plays the most incompetent, stupid politician I have ever seen in a film. We have a lot of bad politicians in reality, but none of them are as bad as this character. This character is not a politician. He's a freaking clown. And not even clowns would act this stupid. And then Jason Mantzoukas. He's not as bad in this film as he was in Dirty Grandpa, where he played Pam the drug dealer, but his character Frank is just insufferable. This guy is so annoying that you wonder who on earth is friends with this guy. He has this ex-wife who he keeps harassing and trying to get her to get back together with him, and she wants nothing to do with him. And you're like, yeah, you tell him. You were right to divorce him. But then she still falls in love with him again anyway. Ugh! I hate it when movies do that, when characters hate another character for the right reason, but then suddenly start liking or loving them again. It just makes no sense, especially with what happens in this movie. And of course, in this movie, you not only have an underground casino, you have underground fight clubs as well. There's a scene with all these women getting into a fighting match, and it's clearly meant to be funny, but it's just insulting. I'm like, who the hell does this in real life? Nobody. And then there's a scene involving Will Ferrell cutting off a guy's finger with an axe. Again, not funny. In fact, it's downright disgusting. I seriously don't... And of course, you got raunchy jokes just for the sake of making raunchy jokes. This movie is just so nonsensical and illogical that it's one of the rare Will Ferrell and Amy Poehler movies that their fans did not like. This movie bombed, and rightfully so. The only reason why I didn't give it a 0 is because Ryan Simpkins as the daughter, she at least tries, and Jeremy Renner's cameo and what happens to his character is so bizarre that I couldn't help but laugh at it. That's the only reason why this movie is not at my number 1. When will Hollywood realize that just because a concept sounds funny on paper doesn't mean it's going to be funny on film? And when will Hollywood realize just because raunchy humor appeals to some doesn't mean that every raunchy joke is going to be the most hilarious joke ever? When will they realize that? Number 4, father figures. Not only is this movie raunchy for the sake of being raunchy, but it is also, once again, downright boring. Ed Helms and Owen Wilson play these fraternal twins who have no idea who their biological father is, and they find out from their mother on her wedding day, no less, because Ed Helms keeps pestering her about it, and she tells him just to shut him up. And they, of course, have to go on a road trip, and they meet all their prospective fathers like Terry Bradshaw, J.K. Simmons, Christopher Walken. Oh, and it just goes on and does not end. This movie is 113 minutes long. How is a film like this that long? It's way too long. And the characters are all just stereotypical. Ed Helms is once again the uptight, insufferable, serious man. Owen Wilson is the lazy surfer dude who has no ambition. And the prospective fathers themselves. Terry Bradshaw, he's wasted, and why is he even in this movie? J.K. Simmons, he's one of the few highlights of the film, but he's just playing another stereotypical tough guy. Christopher Walken just sleepwalking his way through for a paycheck. And then Cat Williams plays this annoying homeless guy. If his character had not been in the film at all, it wouldn't have made a difference because that's how useless his character is. But then, despite all that, they try to throw in a dramatic twist at the end that's meant to be all heartwarming and cathartic, but instead it fails miserably, and it's like, what was the whole point of this movie? Because this twist, it's so anticlimactic and WTF that it makes everything we've just watched completely pointless and worthless. Like, you could have just told them this twist at the very beginning, but of course if you hadn't, there'd be no movie. Ugh. And I thought films like The Foreigner and Just Getting Started were boring, but no. This film was so boring, I lost count of the number of times I fell asleep. Instead of feeling like 2 hours, this film felt like 8 hours. And by the time the credits were rolling, I was like, yes, thank the Lord, it's over. Now, I had virtually no faith in this film, but I try to have somewhat of a positive attitude whenever I go in because I want to be surprised, but this movie is just one of those many movies that prove my instincts were right. Seriously, when you make these comedies, actually put some effort into them and don't just throw things in there just to throw them in there and hope the audience will either be moved or find it funny. That's not what real filmmaking looks like. Number 3, The Emoji Movie. When I heard about this film being put in development, I thought to myself, you've got to be kidding me. A movie about emojis? Really? But as always, I tried to have some hope that this would maybe be at least a guilty pleasure, but no. This is the worst animated film I have ever seen in my life. I thought Legends of Oz: Dorothy's Return was the absolute worst, but no. The Emoji Movie makes that film look like an Oscar-winning masterpiece. The story is one of the most ridiculous stories of any film, animated or live action. It's set in the world of a 14-year-old boy's cell phone, and this boy named Alex has a crush on a girl, but he doesn't know what emoji to send to her to express his feelings. Really? Now that's just the subplot. The main plot is within Alex's phone there's a Met emoji named Gene who doesn't want to be a Met emoji because he can create all sorts of expressions, but of course, if you're an emoji, you can only have one expression. And as a result, Gene is considered defective because he doesn't want to be a Met emoji, and he can be any emoji he wants. So that means the evil smiler emoji must send her minions to fix him, and Gene must go on the run with the high five emoji and And then, the absolute worst thing about this movie, the product placement. Dear God, does this movie have product placement everywhere. YouTube, Spotify, Twitter, Instagram, and the emojis themselves. Ugh. And as a result of all this product placement, the movie is extremely hypocritical with its message. It preaches this message about being yourself and not sticking to conformity and what society wants you to do. However, it then flies in the face of all that and says things like emojis are the most important invention in human history, and encouraging people to embrace all the corporate mechanisms that they were supposed to be rejecting. And for a movie that's aimed at kids to be this hypocritical, that's just the lowest low you can possibly go to. To Sony Pictures Animation and to all the people involved with this movie, shame on you. How on earth you all agreed to be part of this movie, I will never understand. Why you thought this would be a solid film and you thought audiences and kids and critics would actually enjoy it, I will never understand. This is a movie that should never have been made, and it will rightfully go down in history as one of the worst animated films of all time. Number 2, Rough Night. If there's one thing I can't stand in a raunchy comedy, it's characters that are full of stereotypes and characters that try to manipulate the audience into sympathizing with them even though they don't deserve sympathy in the first place. Right off the bat, the concept for this movie is pretty stupid. A bunch of women who are friends in college get together for a bachelorette party because one of them is getting married. They hire a stripper, and then something goes wrong and the stripper ends up getting killed, and they need to find a way to dispose of the body before it's too late and they all end up going to prison. Right off the bat, many people accuse this of being a ripoff of films like Weekend at Bernie's or Very Bad Things, I think it's called. I have not seen any of those films, so I can't really compare it that much. But even so, this film by itself is just stupid and offensive. All 5 of the main characters are just annoying stereotypes. Scarlett Johansson is the career-driven politician who just can't seem to catch a break. Jillian Bell is the extremely clingy, annoying, possessive, jealous best friend who is upset when she's not the center of attention. Zoe Kravitz is the rich divorcee. Alana Glazer is the unemployed lesbian activist who protests every social issue. Yet, despite the fact that she protests for social issues, she herself has a criminal record. And then finally, Kate McKinnon as the weird, crazy foreigner with the funny accent. All of these stereotypes are outdated, and when they're displayed in this movie, they are just downright offensive. Kate McKinnon's accent is so bizarre and offensive that I've actually heard from Australian people that I'm friends with on Facebook who are film lovers like I am, who were deeply offended by her accent. Zoe Kravitz and Alana Glazer, their characters used to be a couple in college, and of course there's still romantic tension between them, and of course, spoiler alert, they're gonna get back together by the end of the movie because of their rekindled feelings for each other. Scarlett Johansson, she's running for election for a state senate office, and even though she's a nice person, her male opponent is ahead of her in the polls because he tweeted a picture of his privates. That would never happen in real life, because when that did happen, it caused the candidate's career to go downhill. Look at Anthony Weiner. But the worst character easily of this bunch is Jillian Bell. Oh my god, her character is so annoying, so jealous, and so possessive that how is anyone friends with her? She's so unlikable that nobody should be friends with her. And near the 2/3 point of the movie, she goes on this rant about how lonely she is, and she says it in such a way that she's trying to manipulate not only the characters, but the audience watching the movie to feel sorry for her. This woman is so unlikable that nobody should feel sorry for her. But because her feelings are hurt, we're automatically supposed to feel sorry for her. But she's given us no reason to feel sorry for her. The whole business with the stripper is just stupid. The way they try to dispose of the dead body is just stupid because of course it's going to fail, and of course every scheme gets crazier and it gets more convoluted, and of course they're going to throw in a twist that will make all the ladies get off scot-free and not have to go to jail. And then there's just as stupid of a subplot involving Scarlett Johansson's fiance. He and his friends, instead of doing the traditional male bachelor party activities, they just sip and sniff wine, which in itself is a good alternative to see, but then he gets the call about something going wrong, he assumes the wedding's going to be off, and he decides to drive down to Miami, since that's where Scarlett Johansson is, and drive there non-stop, and do so by wearing an adult diaper and drinking lots and lots of Red Bull. And of course, when they go to buy the diapers, the cashier is like, not that brand leaks. So she's seen other guys do this before? This all makes no sense. And then the gas station scene. Words cannot describe how awful that scene is, so I'm just not going to talk about it. There need to be more movies, especially comedies, with a largely female cast, but this is one of the most misogynistic movies I have ever seen. Female-centric comedies cannot be like this. And the fact that this was also directed by a woman is even more appalling. Men are often misogynistic in their portrayal of women, but here, Lucia Aniello, her portrayal of women is just as misogynistic as any man's portrayal might have been. And the fact that she and Paul W. Downs, who also played Scarlett Johansson's fiance, they wrote the screenplay together. How is this considered a good screenplay? The two of them have worked on the TV show Broad City, which I hear is an excellent show. So how do you go from that to this? And how did the women in this film think that their characters were great characters? And how did some critics and some audience members think this was a strong, empowering, feminist movie? This movie is an insult to feminists. It's an insult to all women, and it's an insult to all men, too. And it's a good thing audiences picked up on that, because like a lot of films on this list, this film bombed at the box office. Hollywood needs to seriously realize that raunchy comedies, they need to have heart and plausibility, not just raunchy jokes, stereotypes, and just gags that are meant to disgust and shock and offend us, rather than actually make us laugh. That, and many other reasons more, are also why my number one film is the worst film of 2017. Here we go. Number 1. Fist Fight. I could rant on for hours about why I hate this film so much, but I'll try to keep it to a few minutes here. This movie is one of the most illogical, disgusting, offensive portrayals of a school I have ever seen. And the fact that they try to make us think that this is a comedy is even more insulting. This is not a comedy. This is just garbage. A friend of mine named Jerome Latimer said it best. The writers of this movie never went to school. And some people have tried to defend this movie saying, oh, it's just a comedy, it doesn't need to be realistic, we just want to laugh. How do you laugh at this? How are any of the things in this movie funny? How are two teachers getting into a fight in the parking lot and students filming it on their phones funny? How is a teacher smashing a student's desk with an axe funny? How is a teacher who acts like a giant wimp funny? How is a principal and a superintendent who are so incompetent that they put all principals and superintendents to shame funny? How is a horse running through a hallway coked up on crystal meth funny? How is a counselor who wants to sleep with her male students funny? How is a little girl performing at a talent show dropping tons of F-bombs in a rap song funny? How is a security guard who refuses to take threats of violence seriously funny? How are police officers and 911 dispatchers who laugh at a man calling them in panic funny? How are stereotypes about white people and black people funny? How is a gym teacher who wants to have sex with all the students' mothers funny? If anyone can answer all those questions to me and give a logical answer, not just it's just funny because it's funny, or I like laughing at stupid things. If you can give me an answer beyond those things, then I might take you seriously, because I have not met a single person who could give a solid reason for why this movie is funny. This movie is degrading, insulting, racist, sexist, misogynistic. Every bad thing a movie can be, this movie is. This is the second worst film I have seen this decade, only behind Dirty Grandpa. And the fact that this was actually somewhat of a box office success is disgusting. I was in a theater and everyone was laughing. How could people find this funny? Nobody should find this funny. And the fact that some people do find this funny shows that there is a lot of stuff that is wrong with our society. Because I get some things can be funny to some people and offensive to others, but everybody should be offended by this movie. This movie is an insult to teachers, an insult to the public school system, an insult to adults' intelligence, students' intelligence. It's an insult to police officers. It's an insult to all the types of people that were portrayed in this film. This film is an abomination. This film is nuclear waste. This film is so bad that all copies of it need to be buried in a landfill and buried so deep that they can't ever be unearthed. This film represents everything of why raunchy comedy is my least favorite film genre of all time. This film represents everything of why I cannot stand films that try to preach a message about things like the problems of public education and what needs to be fixed in the public education system, and yet just throws in raunchy jokes and offensive gags just for the sake of comedy and saying, oh, but there's still a hopeful and important message in here, when that never ever happens. This movie is so bad I can't think of coherent things to say because I could go on and on, but I just don't want to be sitting here for so long just ranting about this movie, because this movie literally almost destroyed me. It destroyed my soul. It broke my heart to realize that this type of film is actually made and studios actually thought this was good, and actors and producers and directors and writers actually thought this had some kind of financial value and actually took a paycheck for it. Shame on all of you. If you get any backlash in your career because of this, you deserve it. To all the people who worked on this movie, you absolutely deserve it. This is a mark of shame on all your resumes, and you better never make a movie like this again. And a movie like this should never, ever be made again, because there's a lot of problems going on in the world right now, and we do not need another movie like this adding to those problems. Obviously, this isn't as big as other world problems, but in terms of films, this is the absolute worst when it comes to film. If people continue to support these types of films and actually find value in them, then I'm seriously questioning what people even want in a film anymore. We deserve better than this. We must be better than this. That's all I gotta say, because so many people have said so much other stuff about Fist Fight that they obviously said it a lot better than I could, and there's no way I could top what they said. Such as you, Jerome, if you're watching this. But I've done my best to highlight why this movie is offensive, and the less said about this movie, the better, because I seriously don't understand how it could have been made. I really don't. Well, I've done it. Those are my worst films of 2017. Let me know in the comment section below what your worst films of 2017 were, and what you think of my list. And please subscribe to my channel if you've not yet done so, so you can get my new videos as soon as they're uploaded. And I'll see you soon with my list of the best movies of 2017. Thank you for watching. Bye.